The stale scent of coffee grounds and disinfectant hung in the air of the diner, a familiar perfume to my Tuesday nights. Across the red vinyl booth, my husband of 15 years, Mark, stirred his black coffee with a focus usually reserved for heart surgery. The chipped ceramic mug scraped against the Formica table with a rhythmic, grating sound. I watched him, my own hands wrapped around my chamomile tea, trying to ignore the low, familiar thrum of anxiety in my chest. This was our monthly check-in, a tradition we'd started a year ago in a last-ditch effort to bridge the quiet canyon that had opened up between us. So, I began, my voice sounding too bright, too forced. Work was good today. I finally closed the Henderson account. Mark looked up, his blue eyes, the same ones I'd fallen into at a college frat party 2 decades ago, seemed distant, clouded. That's great, Sarah, really great. The silence that followed was heavier than the diner's old-fashioned jukebox. We'd become experts in this dance, polite, surface level, utterly lonely. We talked about our kids, Liam and Chloe, about the leaky faucet, about the new neighbors. We did not talk about the fact that we hadn't touched in months, that we slept on opposite sides of a king-sized bed feeling a million miles apart. I've been thinking, Sarah, Mark said, finally setting his spoon down. He took a deep breath, the kind you take before jumping into cold water. About us. About what we need. My heart did a clumsy flip. This was it, the preamble to, I think we need a break, or, I'm not happy, or the one I dreaded most, I love you, but I'm not in love with you anymore. I braced myself, my knuckles turning white around my mug. I mentally prepared my defenses, my pleas, my tears. I want to ask you for something, he said, his gaze steady on mine. And it's unexpected. I need you to just listen before you say anything. I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. Here it comes, I thought. He's met someone else. He wants a divorce. He leaned forward, his voice dropping, though the diner was nearly empty save for a tired-looking waitress wiping down counters. For the next 30 days, he said, his words measured and deliberate, I want you to point out one thing I do wrong, every single day. One criticism, every night, before we go to bed. I blinked. The diner's fluorescent lights seemed to buzz louder. I replayed his words in my head, sure I'd misheard. Of all the things I'd imagined, affairs, separation, therapy, this was not on the list. This was bizarre. You want me to criticize you? I finally managed, my voice a whisper. Every day, for a month. Yes, he said, his expression deadly serious. It has to be a real criticism. Not, you left your socks on the floor. Something meaningful, something about how I'm failing as a husband, or a father, or just as a partner. I need to hear it. A hysterical laugh bubbled in my chest, but it died before it reached my lips. He wasn't joking. The raw, almost painful earnestness in his eyes was something I hadn't seen in years. Mark, that's insane, I stammered. Why would you want that? We've spent the last 2 years trying not to criticize each other. We've been walking on eggshells. This feels like inviting a war. Maybe the eggshells are the problem, he countered. Maybe we've built this museum of our marriage, where everything is quiet and clean and perfectly preserved, and it's dead inside. I don't want a museum, Sarah. I want a living, breathing, messy life with you. Even if it's messy. Especially if it's messy. I stared at him, completely disarmed. This wasn't a man asking for a way out. This was a man asking for a way back in, through the most counterintuitive, terrifying door I could imagine. I don't understand, I said, feeling utterly lost. I read something, he explained, running a hand through his already messy hair. About how criticism, real criticism, is a form of engagement. It means you still care enough to want me to be better. That you still see me. The silence feels like you've given up. And I can't live with that. Tears pricked my eyes. He was right. The silence was a form of giving up. It was a white flag I'd been waving for months, too tired and too scared to fight anymore. The idea of deliberately picking a fight every day felt exhausting, dangerous. But the alternative, the endless, polite silence, suddenly felt like a death sentence. Okay, I heard myself say, the word leaving my lips before my brain could fully veto it. Okay, I'll do it. The first week was agony. That first night, we stood in our bathroom, brushing our teeth in the familiar, parallel silence. My heart was pounding. This felt more intimate than any physical act we'd shared in recent memory. I spat into the sink, looked at his reflection in the mirror. Today, I started, my voice shaky. You promised Liam you'd help him with his science project. You came home 2 hours late from work, and he went to bed disappointed. You prioritized a conference call over your son's volcano. It hurt him. I expected defensiveness, anger, a list of justifications. Instead, Mark stopped brushing, his shoulders slumping. He met my eyes in the mirror, and I saw not anger, but profound sadness. You're right, he said, his voice thick. I did, and it's not the first time. Thank you for telling me. He finished brushing, rinsed his mouth, and walked out of the bathroom. I stood there, stunned. He had thanked me. The world felt tilted on its axis. The next night, I criticized his habit of interrupting me when I was telling a story to friends. He listened, nodded, and said, I'll be more mindful. I don't like that I do that. On the third night, I told him his constant negativity about his job was draining, that it cast a shadow over our dinners. He didn't thank me that time. He got quiet, but it was a thinking quiet, not a punishing one. The next evening, he made a conscious effort to talk about a funny thing that happened in the break room. It was as if I had been given a key to a room I'd been locked out of for years. My criticisms weren't met with the defensive walls I'd expected. They were being received. He was listening, truly listening. By the second week, the dynamic in our house began to shift. The oppressive politeness started to evaporate, replaced by a new, raw honesty. The criticisms were hard to deliver, like exercising a muscle that had atrophied. I had to really see him again, to pay attention not just to what he was doing wrong, but to him as a person. I noticed the tired lines around his eyes, the way he always made sure the back door was locked, the absent-minded humming he did when he was reading. One night, after I'd pointed out that he'd been emotionally absent during a conversation about Chloe's struggles with a friend at school, he didn't just accept it. He asked a question. Why does that bother you so much? He asked, sitting on the edge of the bed. The question threw me. I was so used to launching my critique and retreating. Because it makes me feel like I'm alone in parenting. Like I'm the only one who carries the emotional weight of our kids' lives. It makes me feel like a single parent, even when you're in the room. He was quiet for a long moment. I didn't know that's how it felt, he said softly. I thought I was just giving you space to handle it. I see now that it feels like abandonment. It was my turn to be stunned. He was not just hearing my words, he was trying to understand the feeling behind them. The third week brought a turning point. It was a Thursday, and it had been a terrible day. Work had been a nightmare, traffic was hell, and I'd burned the dinner I'd spent an hour preparing. I was a frayed wire, sparking with frustration. When Mark came home, he was whistling, seemingly oblivious to the cloud of disaster hanging over me. My planned, measured criticism went out the window. As he walked into the kitchen, took one look at the charred casserole, and chuckled, well, looks like we're ordering pizza, I snapped. You know what your problem is? I hissed, all the day's pent-up fury channeling into him. You float through life. You just float. Things bother me, they stress me out, I worry, I plan, I feel everything so deeply it hurts sometimes. And you just let it all roll off your back. You don't get angry, you don't get sad, you just adapt. And sometimes, Mark, sometimes it feels like you're not even really here. It feels like I'm married to a ghost, a pleasant, agreeable ghost who never really engages with the messy, difficult, real stuff of life. I was breathing heavily, my hands clenched at my sides. I had gone nuclear. This wasn't a constructive criticism, it was an attack on his entire character. I had broken the rules of our strange experiment. Mark's face went pale. The easy smile was gone, replaced by a look of such profound hurt that I instantly felt sick with guilt. He didn't say a word. He just turned, walked out of the kitchen, and I heard the front door close softly behind him. I sank into a chair, tears of shame and exhaustion streaming down my face. I'd ruined it. I'd taken his strange, beautiful request and weaponized it. An hour passed. Then too, I was convinced he wasn't coming back. I imagined him in a hotel room, or driving endlessly on the highway, finally free of his hysterical wife. But he did come back. He walked into the living room where I was sitting in the dark, a statue of misery. He didn't turn on the light. He just sat beside me on the couch, the springs groaning under his weight. You're right, he said into the darkness, his voice rough with emotion. I do that. I float. He took a deep, shuddering breath. My dad, he was a storm. You never knew what would set him off. Anger, yelling, slamming doors, it was the soundtrack of my childhood. I promised myself I would never be like that. I would never let my emotions control me, never make my family afraid of the sound of my car in the driveway. So I built this system inside. Everything gets processed, neutralized, contained. I thought I was being strong. I thought I was being a good husband, a good father, by being steady. I didn't realize I'd built a prison. I didn't realize that in trying not to be a storm, I'd made myself a desert. I listened, my tears now for him, for the little boy he'd been, for the man he'd tried so hard to become. You feeling everything so deeply, he continued, it terrified me. It felt like looking into the sun. I thought if I got too close, my whole careful system would short-circuit. So I floated. I stayed safe. And I left you alone in the storm. In the dark, I reached for his hand. His fingers laced with mine, tight, almost desperate. I'm sorry, I whispered. Don't be, he said. You were the only one brave enough to tell me the truth. That night, we didn't just break the silence, we shattered it. We talked for hours, about our fears, our childhoods, the ways we'd failed each other without ever meaning to. We cried. We held each other. For the first time in years, we were not two separate islands, we were a continent, connected by this raw, uncharted landscape of truth. The fourth week was different. The criticisms continued, but they were gentler, more like observations. They were no longer bullets, but scalpels, carefully used to dissect the barriers between us. And he started asking for more. What else? He'd say. What else do you see? On the 29th day, he came home with a small, nervous energy about him. After the kids were in bed, he sat me down on the couch. The 30 days are almost up, he said. This was my request, my thing. But this process, it made me see things about you, too. And I need to tell you one. My breath hitched. This was it, the other shoe. He was going to unload all the things he'd been storing up. My criticism, he said, his eyes soft, is that you are too hard on yourself. You carry the weight of this entire family on your shoulders and you never complain, but I see the toll it takes. You think you have to be perfect. The perfect mom, the perfect wife, the perfect employee. And when you're not, you tear yourself apart. You don't extend yourself the same grace you're so quick to extend to everyone else. And it breaks my heart to watch. I started to cry, silent, cathartic tears. No one had ever seen that part of me, the secret, self-critical engine that drove me. I had always thought it was my hidden flaw. He saw it as my burden. So, he said, taking my hands. My request is over, but I have a new one. For both of us. What is it? I asked, my voice thick. That we never go back to the silence. That we promise to keep seeing each other, even when it's hard. Even when it's messy. That we make this a permanent part of us. I looked at my husband, the man I thought I'd lost, the man who had asked for the one thing I never would have expected, the key that had unexpectedly unlocked the door between us. I saw the love in his eyes, not the placid, comfortable love of before, but a fierce, engaged, living love. I promise, I said. And I meant it. The diner smells the same. Coffee grounds and disinfectant. But the man sitting across from me in the red vinyl booth is different. His eyes are present. He reaches across the table and takes my hand, his thumb stroking my knuckles. So, he says, a small, genuine smile playing on his lips. Your turn. What's my criticism for today? I smile back, squeezing his hand. I'm still thinking about it, I say. But don't worry, I'll let you know. And for the first time in a very, very long time, the future didn't feel like something to be endured. It felt like an adventure we were finally taking together, armed with nothing but the brave, unexpected, and transformative power of the truth.